I think I am mentally ready to make this video. What I mean by that is, whatever I say about Blackpink in this video and the members and their music, if I even give all of the solos 10 out of 10s, Blinks are going to find some way to twist that against me and bash me and other people in the comment section. That's just how the toxic side of the fandom operates, and I've had my fair share of encounters with toxic Blinks in the past with some of my videos. And I'll own up to now and say that some of my past Blackpink videos, like a year ago or so, are not my best work at all, and if I could really take back what I said in a lot of those videos, I would, because there were some rash things I've said in the past. However, that has not stopped Blinks from coming after me, my content, sending me, like, hateful fucking emails and comments. So I want to send the message to Blinks watching this video that none of the criticism in this video is aimed towards the members specifically. In fact, I think that every concept the different members were given fits them very well, and I wouldn't necessarily change those concepts. This is simply my subjective look at the era that was Blackpink solo music that lasted 5 years, which is crazy. It took YG 5 years to give every single member solo music, which is just terrible. I've seen some people online say that, well, Blackpink doesn't make a lot of music and they don't make a lot of solo music because the members aren't really passionate for writing music or whatever, or they don't really care about making music, which I think is kind of a weird assumption to make. Blackpink does have leverage over their company because they're the only thing that's keeping YG up right now, but that doesn't necessarily mean that Blackpink has the utmost creative freedom that people believe they do. But we don't really know what happens behind the scenes with that kind of stuff. I'm not going to assume that they have a ton of freedom or they don't have freedom. I'm just going to review what's given to me and assess the situation from my point of view. We're also going to go in chronological order, so we're going to go Jennie, then Rose, then Lisa, and now Jisoo. I won't be rating them or anything like I do in my monthly review videos. I'm just going to be talking whether I like or dislike them. While there is criticism in this video, I'm not sitting here preying on Blackpink's downfall. I'm not like rubbing my hands together and laughing maniacally like some Disney villain like, oh man, I can't wait to see Blackpink fail. Like, that's not what's going on here. Blackpink were the group that literally got me into K-pop, so I have a lot of respect for them even when I do criticize their music. And there are some things that I really do like about some of these souls we'll be talking about today, so don't expect this video to just be a hate tirade on every single song. I'm sorry for this incredibly long intro, I just had to get some stuff out of the way because whether I like it or not, I'm going to get backlash for this video just because I'm criticizing Blackpink's music. Before you type me a hate comment or anything down below for what I've said, just watch through the entire video and then form your conclusions. So getting that out of the way, the first solo we're going to be covering today is The first solo to come out by a Blackpink member was Jennie's Solo, which came out on November 18th, 2018. This came out shortly after arguably their biggest release of all time with the 4D song. I'm not even going to try to pronounce it because I always stumble over myself whenever I try to pronounce that song's name, and was massively popular on release, debuting at #1 on the Gaon Digital chart and staying in the top 10 for 13 consecutive weeks. It also right now sits at just over 900 million views on YouTube. Now, I will talk about the song in the music video, but first I actually want to talk about the time at which this released and why this was honestly such a bad move by YG. Before Jennie even debuted in Blackpink, she was known as the Princess of YG online. She was hated on a lot because of the apparent favoritism that was shown towards her by the company. And up until the point of Solo, a lot of it was just really mean speculation online. People pointing out maybe 1 to 2 performances or practices where she maybe looked like she wasn't trying as hard, making up false rumors about her, just like a bunch of cyberbullying shit that was really mean. A couple of years ago, Mara put out a video that talked about this whole thing and the villainization of Jennie. That video is pretty old, but I would recommend watching it. It is one of my more favorite K-pop related YouTube videos on this platform. And it kind of does show how Jennie became this catalyst for the it girl hate that we have seen even now into the 4th generation with idols like Wonyoung and Yuna. And while Jennie was not the first idol to be hated on in this way, she was the one that arguably received the most hate online and essentially became a punching bag for the entire community for basically no reason. And YG never really did anything about the way Jennie was treated online, and the worst thing YG could have possibly done was give Jennie a solo. But obviously YG isn't very smart. After the release of Solo, Jennie received even more hate and backlash by the community, because now the community actually had tangible fuel to add to the fire. A lot of times online with K-pop communities, people will claim people as being the favorites of companies and stuff like that. In this scenario, they had actual evidence to potentially back up their claims. Instead of protecting Jennie from the hate that she was getting online, YG quite literally just added fuel to the fire. It's one of the most embarrassing things I've seen a company do. Was this release popular and successful? Yes, of course it was. But that came in sacrifice with more people jumping on the Jennie hate train. It also didn't help that during this time, Jennie had been seen, maybe not trying as hard with some dances around Blackpink's music, but when it came to Solo, she was very active. Her stage presence was a lot better. Now, I will say a lot of that was nitpicking, and idols obviously make mistakes on stage, so I'm not sitting here trying to back up that narrative, but it was something that happened at the time. Now, onto the actual song itself and the music video. Jennie is not credited as a songwriter here, but is credited for coming up with the concept of the song. The songwriter and producing credits go to Teddy Park and 24. Now, I'm someone who has not been a big fan of Teddy's production. The Teddy formula is a very hotly debated topic surrounding Blackpink. Now, I will tell you I'm not a big fan of Teddy's production. I find a lot of his production to be very boring, and unfortunately that carries over here. I feel like this song is incredibly forgettable. The instrumental is quite empty. There's a lot of 808s and some horns, but there's really nothing special here. The repeating "I'm going solo" during the chorus is a bit memorable and a little catchy. It's what I personally remember the song for, but again, from a lyricism standpoint, it's very boring. The final bridge is also pretty basic as well, with some weird cuts in the audio that seem to dilute her vocals a bit. The final section of the song adds some EDM elements, but again, this sounds pretty surface level for a Blackpink track. I do like her singing here more than her rapping. Jennie is known as being a pretty good all-around idol. She can dance and sing and rap, and I actually like her vocals here more than the rapping section. I do think compared to most other K-pop idols out there, Jennie is more of a gifted rapper, but really the lyricism here does her absolutely no favors. It doesn't take advantage of the talent she has. The line, "used to be your girl, now I'm used to being the GOAT." The fuck does that even mean? When this song dropped, Blackpink was barely out of their stage of technically being rookies, and Teddy's writing about Jennie being the greatest of all time, which again, only added to people talking about how Jennie was favored. The whole rap section itself is just very poorly written. Like, Teddy, please don't write rap sections ever again. And honestly, that's a pretty common theme with a lot of Blackpink rapping. It sounds a lot better than it actually is. And that's because Jennie and LaLisa, compared to a lot of rappers in K-pop, are a little more technically gifted. However, I tend to not be a fan of the actual lyricism behind these rap sections. As for the music video itself, it's also quite boring. There isn't a very elaborate story being told here, and the sets seem like wasted space. The styling is fine for the most part, but to be honest, I don't understand what the point of this music video is. Like, there's this kind of mini love story being told here and how she has to move past a boy treating her wrong, but it's literally about as surface level as you can get. This whole music video essentially just boils down to Jennie looking pretty in some basic sets. Unfortunately, that becomes a theme for some of Blackpink's solos when it comes to cinematography. Overall, Jennie's solo is memorable because it can be catchy, but when it comes to the actual production and lyricism of the song, I find it both to be quite lackluster. I think the thing that we should be talking about in this scenario is the hate Jennie received because she was the first one to get a solo, rather than the pretty forgettable song itself. Jennie has a lot of talent, and all of that talent was wasted here.
Seems fantastic. I used to have a hole in the wall with a mattress. Funny when you want it, suddenly you have it. You find out that your goal's just plastic. Every day, every night, I've been thinking back on you and I. Every day, every night.
For Rosé's solo debut, she would debut with the single album R, which contained songs On the Ground and Gone. This would release nearly 3 years after Jennie's solo on March 12, 2021. And I know in between these periods, Blackpink was doing a lot of stuff with becoming ambassadors of things and doing, out of music content and even having some comebacks, but you really took that long to give another member a solo? This is easily the biggest chunk of time in between the solos that it took for another member to get a solo release. Writing credits on the Ground go to Rose and Teddy Park, while production credits go to John Bellion, OG Volta, Odegaard, and 24. I probably butchered one of those. Now, Teddy Park is absent from the production here, which is why the production for both Gone and On the Ground sound very not Blackpink, which is just a breath of fresh air. I actually like the production of both of these songs more than most of Blackpink's other production. On the Ground would debut at number 1 on the Billboard Hot 200 and global excluding US charts with 92.1 million streams and 29,000 global downloads. It also charted in the Global 200 for 7 weeks and debuted at number 15 on the Gaon charts and peaked at number 4. It would also debut and peak at number 70 on the Billboard Hot 100, becoming at the time the highest charting female Korean soloist in the United States. It was also nominated for some big end-of-the-year award shows such as Song of the Year at the MMAs and MAMAs, and won Best Dance Performance Solo at the Mnet Asian Music Awards. On the Ground is probably the worst out of the two songs for me personally. It's pretty simple pop rock with some heavy EDM influences in the chorus. To be honest with you, it sounds like something that maybe like Selena Gomez or maybe even Taylor Swift would release, maybe in the mid-2010s. I don't really love it, but I also don't really hate it either. It's kind of just middling for me. It seems to be kind of run-of-the-mill pop for me, which is somewhat disappointing because I think that Rose has a bright solo future. I definitely see her as being one of the most successful soloists coming out of BP. Even though BP has a massive Western fan base as it is, I see a lot of people over in the United States really like Rose because she can speak fluent English and incorporates that English into a lot of her solo material already. I just think my main gripe with this song is that very tacky EDM chorus. I do like how she actually adds some ad-libs to it and some background details to not make it sound incredibly empty, but this really does feel stuck in 2014. Also, the MV is just very boring. There's not really a good use of set design or cinematography here from me. It's just, again, Rose looking pretty in some decent sets. Gone's production includes Brian Lee and 24, with the songwriter credits being attributed to Rose, Brian Lee, Teddy Park, and Jay Lauren. And for a fun fact, Gone has less than half of the beats per minute that On the Ground does at 80 compared to On the Ground's 189. I think Gone has the better lyricism out of the two songs, and it also feels distinctly more rosé out of the two songs. It feels a tad bit more down-to-earth and honest and pretty lax, and I think it should be. There's also no big beat drop in this. This is the first solo we're talking about that doesn't have some sort of weird EDM chorus. The guitar riff plays continuously through basically the entire song, which makes it feel somewhat empty in a haunting way. Gone is also the first solo here that I actually genuinely enjoy. Like, I would listen to this on a playlist or something. I wouldn't put Solo on a playlist. I probably wouldn't put On the Ground on one of my playlists. Those songs are just very boring to me, production-wise, but Gone actually has something going for it, and it feels like it really fits Rose well without having to confine itself to the Blackpink mold that a lot of these other songs so far have seemed to go for. LaLisa would only debut a few months later in September of 2021 with LaLisa and Money. LaLisa was produced by 24, Becca Boom, and once again Teddy Park, and that definitely shows in the very Blackpink production of this song. Loud horns and pretty generic snares through most of the chorus. Writing credits on LaLisa go to Teddy Park and Becca Boom, and look, I said this earlier, but someone needs to get Teddy off of writing rap sections because it's not good here. This debuted at number 2 on the Billboard Global 200 and achieved 152.6 million streams globally in its opening week, and charted on the Global 200 for 10 weeks. It debuted at 90 on the Gaon Digital chart and rose to its peak position of 64. It also debuted at 84 on the Billboard Hot 100. It would also go on to win the Best K-pop award at the 2022 MTV Music Awards, so congratulations to her for that as well. Now, back to the song itself. The chorus is pretty catchy, I'm not going to deny that. Like, that could definitely repeat in my head. But man, this song is incredibly boring to me. The first rap section in all English is just really poorly written. Like, it's bad. And that might be a little bias coming from me because I listen to some of the, in my opinion, best lyrical hip-hop rappers out there from the West, like Kanye West and Kendrick Lamar, Nas, Denzel Curry, Vince Staples. That's what I listened to growing up. So when I hear an English rap section like this, it just makes me cringe incredibly hard. Now, I do believe this song was made for kind of a club environment, so I don't think that the rap section was meant to be incredibly in-depth or lyrically intense, but that doesn't excuse it for being bad. The lyrics, promise there's nothing scarier than me if anybody comin', gunnin' for my man, gonna catch a case, gun up in my hand, bam bam bam, hit after hit though, rocks in my wrist, so I call them the Flintstones.
Hey, yeah. Cut the shit off, bro. Cut the shit the fuck off!
That is so horrible to me that it physically hurts. A common criticism for a lot of Blackpink raps in their songs is that Jennie and LaLisa tend to come off with a black scent. Like, talking about a gun up in your hand, come on, Teddy. The beat switch in the final section is actually nice, though. I like how they did that, and the rap is way better written here and executed. It actually has a decent flow, unlike the first rap section, and some of the outfit and set design here is also pretty good. The repetitive LaLisa part is pretty dry, though. It kind of kills any sort of momentum that verse had going for it. The music video here is a little bit more in depth than the previous ones, but I mean, it's still pretty boring. It's just some cool looking sets and Lisa dancing and rapping. As for the single Money, it peaked at 10th on the Billboard Global 200 and 7th on the global excluding US charts. It charted on the Global 200 for 29 weeks, marking it the longest charting K-pop song by a soloist and the second longest charting song by any female K-pop act, just behind Blackpink's How You Like That. The song itself would go on to blow up on TikTok, creating various dance challenges and spreading into the West pretty heavily. The dance practice has more views on YouTube than the LaLisa MV, which I find somewhat ironic. Now, one thing that is interesting here is that Teddy is not on the production of this song or even on the lyricism. He is absent from this track. However, Money suffers from the same issues that go on to plague LaLisa. In fact, these songs are very similar. You have yet another horn driving a lot of these verses into the chorus. Both songs have a switch up that sound very different than the rest of the song that eventually lead into the final chorus. Money does have a little singing portion of Lisa during the pre-chorus, but unfortunately the chorus suffers from it's catchy, so it has to be good. In a way, both songs feel a little too similar to me and do nothing to make Lisa stand out as a soloist. Instead, these tracks come off as just Lisa from Blackpink instead of Lisa as a soloist. Normally, when soloists break off from their groups in K-pop, they tend to try to experiment with different sounds or to reveal who they really are as a singer, because sometimes idols can be trapped within the concepts that companies push for their groups. Doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen a lot, and I was hoping with Lisa we would get to see something different here, but unfortunately we just get more of Blackpink's Lisa. Both of these songs really just sound like they were made for TikTok, and that's about it.
ABC, 도레미, 만큼 착했던 나. 그 눈빛이 싹 변했지. 어쩜 이 또 하나니까.
Which now takes us to the most recent solo. On March 31st, 2023, Jisoo debuted with her single album, Me, with lead single Flower, composed by 24, VVN, and Kush, while being written by Kush, VVN, Vince, and of course, Teddy. This was produced solely by 24. So far, the critical reception has been a mixed bag, with a lot of quote-unquote experts saying how this song is really good. An example being Rian Dali, for NME naming it one of the best K-pop songs of the year thus far. Hopefully I've said their name correctly. While reception from the casual K-pop audience has been a lot more negative, some calling it the worst solo and others saying it's a complete waste. Apparently, the label said that this was the highest production budget they have ever invested into a Blackpink music video. And to me, I say, okay, here I say, and to me, I say, it's supposed to be, and to that I say, I don't know what the fuck I was on when I recorded this, but my bad. Like, they shoot on some very pretty sets, most of which fit the vibe very well, but what about this MV outside of maybe location shots and maybe some props was incredibly expensive? Because I know it wasn't the editing. That's honestly more of a genuine question than a dig in any way. I just don't know where the money went for this music video. I assume it's just where they went to shoot was expensive to shoot at, because the music video is pretty cut and dry. Flower itself as a song is quite different compared to the rest of Blackpink's solo debuts, with a laid-back build-up and snappier tempo. I have voiced my frustration with this song in the past, but I will say that I really was getting into it up until the chorus. Every set, outfit choice, and even the feeling of the production up until that point was very Jisoo. Like, this is her concept. This is the concept that I envisioned her doing. However, that chorus is just so disappointing. This was yet another chorus with no singing, no vocals, and this just really almost annoying, buzzing, waning synth they use. I do not like it. At least there aren't any horns or bass choices in this song that would have really ruined it. But I'm not over-exaggerating when I say that this chorus really did suck all of the life out of this song. Like, this song really had the potential, the opportunity to be very, very good. I will say that the final chorus is at least a little bit, like, you know, you get some ad-libs from Jisoo, but I mean, like, what were they thinking when making this chorus? You could have at least added some sort of string instrumentals, or maybe a piano or something in the chorus to make it feel a little more alive, but it feels so dead and hollow and lifeless. And the MV, what a waste of a location. Like, some of these sets are very pretty, but there's nothing going on here. Like, what is going on in this music video besides Jisoo looking pretty in some really pretty outfits and walking around, you know, getting out of a car? Like, what is going on here? Jisoo's vocals are really pretty. She's always been my favorite vocalist in Blackpink, and I do really think she sounds good on here. It's just disappointing that the song is ruined by its mediocre pacing and boring chorus. Then there's the B-side, All Eyes on Me, which once again has some great vocals by Jisoo. However, this time is ruined by its super dated production. What in the 2015 is this? To me, this chorus sounded scarily similar to Ready for Love. Maybe I was the only one who heard that, but it sounds very similar. I can't help but flash back to that super stale and repetitive time around 2014 to 2016 in the West, where every DJ were making these like EDM influenced summer songs. That is what this reminds me of, but in like the worst way possible. This song would have been fine if it was put on maybe a longer EP to help space out the project, but this is the only B-side we get. The one big positive from this solo debut is that she finally has her own solo to perform on tour, which she has done, because up until this point, she's the only member that hasn't had a solo to perform on tour, which I think is low-key kind of embarrassing. So, it took us half a decade, but we are finally out of the era of getting through Blackpink's solo debuts. Now look, taking this long to pump out a solo for each member would have been more understandable if Blackpink were a more actively promoting group. Like, if they had 2 comebacks a year and were constantly doing stuff, then yeah, I could definitely see there being an excuse for them not getting solos as quickly as other groups. But Blackpink averages like maybe 1 comeback a year since 2018. And I get it, they're ambassadors for different products. Jisoo is in a K-drama, like they're doing concerts. I get it. And the problem is, a lot of the products that we got for these debuts were made by the same producers in-house, and there wasn't a ton of differentiation. There wasn't a ton of going outside of the company and looking for producers to help with their music. Blackpink has stayed in YG to their detriment for the last 5 to 6 years. Many K-pop fans like to look at the Teddy formula with a lot of Blackpink songs and how they're structured, and yes, it is a real issue with Blackpink songs in my opinion because Teddy Park makes incredibly boring, generic music. And unfortunately, a lot of these solo songs from their debuts was incredibly boring, generic music. I have no doubt once Blackpink leave YG and probably further their solo careers, that their music will actually end up getting better. The last real video I made on this account before this goes up was my should Blackpink renew their contracts in August of this year. And I'm someone who thinks they maybe should because they are a large brand in K-pop. They make so much money, they're so popular that it would be kind of dumb for them to split from the company because they make a ton of money for both the company and themselves, and they have forged this huge reputation because of the company and the group name. So leaving YG and potentially disbanding Blackpink would be a really weird thing to do. A lot of the viewers and some blinks under that video told me that Blackpink should disband, or even if they don't disband, they should at least leave the company. And I do sympathize with them and understand where they're coming from. I agree that the only way Blackpink's music is going to get better than it is right now is if they end up leaving that company. Once they leave YG and get some new producers, they have the potential to be a group with a good discography, but that is never going to happen, at least as Blackpink the group. As for their solo careers, I am sure that Rose, LaLisa, Jisoo, and Jennie will have great solo careers if they continue to pursue music. I've seen a lot of people say that Blackpink have lost interest in making music. Obviously they have. Look at the passion they've lost on stage, which is funny to me because it looks like they're actually having a lot of fun on stage right now on their tour. And I don't think we've ever really gotten concrete evidence where they've said that, like, we don't like making music anymore. I've saw some people say that, but I literally couldn't find any quotes of them saying anything like that. I mean, Jisoo was the person who inspired the theme of her solo debut. As someone who does criticize Blackpink a good amount, to the point where I've been labeled as a hater by a lot of blinks, I will say that I do think that Blackpink are interested in making music, and I think the reason that at times they may seem like they don't is because of how large the spotlight is shining on them at any given point. Blackpink became what BTS could have become. Blackpink became the brand Blackpink, the concept Blackpink. Blackpink's discography is smaller than some girl groups who debuted years after Blackpink debuted. Blackpink members became affiliates with these different brands really early on and appeared at a lot of events and stuff, and they became more of a brand than a K-pop group. BTS are really large. They've done collaborations with all these different companies. Jungkook just became a, ambassador for Calvin Klein. Suga just became the global ambassador for the NBA. Like, they do similar things, but at least they still make music and show passion in making music and give us quality B-sides and quality title tracks. BTS now are just a grown-up version of the BTS that we saw back in 2015. Blackpink now don't feel like the same Blackpink that we saw when they debuted. That is why I think Blackpink's solo careers are going to be a big indication on whether or not they really love making music. If all the members pursue solo music careers, then maybe a lot of people are wrong. They are interested in making music. But if people like maybe Rose or just Lisa or just Jennie go into just making music and the rest go and be brand ambassadors and, acting and stuff, which I assume Jisoo probably go into acting since she's already been in a K-drama, it could show signs that, Blackpink maybe lost their interest with music. I'll end this video on something I normally don't do with Blackpink videos, and I'll end it on a positive note. I'm excited about the future of Blackpink's solo endeavors. I'm excited to see what Rose does in the future. I'm excited to see what Jennie and Lisa and maybe potentially Jisoo branch on in the future, and if they eventually leave YG and get new producers and go make music elsewhere. I'm excited because these girls are super young, right? Like, they really are still so young. They have such a bright future ahead of them. I find Flower by Jisoo to be an incredibly boring and stale song, and I don't like it. I think it's a bad song. But I'm happy to see it become very successful. It was a million seller. You know, I'm happy to see Jisoo finally get a solo to perform, right? Like, I don't like the song, but that doesn't mean I can't cheer on Jisoo in the future as a soloist, right? Which honestly leads me at odds, right? I'm someone who wants Blackpink to still exist as a group because I still think they have a ton of potential and they are one of the pillars of K-pop. They're part of the Holy Trinity from the third generation. They have helped influence a ton of how K-pop operates now. But at the same time, I want them to flourish as soloists, but you can't have both coexisting at the same time. BTS have flourished as soloists recently because they have taken a hiatus as being a group because of their mandatory military assignments. So because of that, we've seen a great album from RM, a fantastic album from J-Hope, an album coming up from Suga. YG doesn't give Blackpink good enough production for me to want them to stay under the company for their solo careers, but I still want Blackpink to exist, which puts me at a moral dilemma with YG and if Blackpink should leave YG or not. And I think that's another question which I attempted to answer last video, but I don't even know if the opinions I hold in my last video are my concrete opinions. But I think we can all agree, please get Teddy Park off those raps. God.